Boys, we are back with our week 4 recap, and we're back here with our man Lucas again, and he is rocking an Eagles jersey again because the Eagles are still undefeated, and I'm rocking a Steelers jersey because it's Kenny Pickett season, boys, and so we're excited. We got our new man is back there, and he's gonna, we're only one game behind in the division standings, so there is still hope. I have not lost faith. And so I think Pickett's going to carry us, and it is officially Pickettsburg. So let's get it.
What's your record?
1-3. But the rest of the division
is
early
in the season. Though.
The rest of the division is 2-2.
Yeah,
your team's been in the NFC East. You're used to being in a bad division, right? Currently, the AFC North is a lot of good teams that are just not playing that well, and the Steelers are included.
Well, the Ravens, they had a 20-point lead against the Bills, and they blew the lead. So, I don't know. Pickett looked pretty solid, finishing the game out. So, and he threw that ball to Claypool that he dropped. So, I mean, but
I blame Claypool.
He trusted him, though,
he did.
Which is something that Trubisky's, not a big risk taker. So, I think that things are looking up for Pittsburgh.
On to our league review here, and it was a non-eventful week because every single match was an absolute blowout. The closest match was me and Sam, and it was a 41-point differential. Or am I reading that correct, Lucas? You look here and you tell me, was there anyone closer than 41 points?
I'm not seeing it. I mean,
nothing.
Yeah, so I mean, there was even scores that were doubled. A couple of them almost doubled. So
absolute massacre, absolute blowouts, not a single close matchup, and the Giants have fallen. The number 1, the number 2 seed, the only 2 undefeated teams left, have now been taken down, and you were one of those.
Yeah, I was feeling pretty good after the third week because obviously you always feel good when you put up a lot of points in consecutive weeks. But as I was looking through this matchup, in the back of my mind, all I could think of was Marcus has a really good team. He's got really good receivers that could just, go crazy at any point. And how many teams, just go like week to week to week, just putting up that many points. So
right.
I had a feeling that it was coming. And when I saw his team and the receivers that he had, I was like, his team is as good as anybody's.
Yep.
So I thought that he had a really good shot to beat me. And if I was predicting before the week, I actually would have picked him. So
wow.
He's got a solid team for sure.
I did not pick him. I was wrong. I do like his team a lot, and I've talked about it in the past weeks. But, like you said, with your team, pretty much back-to-back 200-point weeks, it is like, hey, maybe that's just a fluke. Maybe it's just, just happened. But also, like, if it happens a third week in a row and a fourth week in a row, we're going to look back and be like, man, we were really dumb for ever doubting his team. Like, his team is legit. You've got studs. He did as well, and his guys showed up. And that's kind of the pattern that we're going to see here from everybody, and we'll go ahead and we'll get started. There's not going to be much to say. There were no close matchups, like we've said. We'll go ahead and we'll start off with me versus Sam. I have been saying this for weeks and weeks and weeks. Every single week, I have said Sam's team is better than it looks. They are going to bounce back. I fully believe that. He was 0-3. It was looking very, very grim for him, but I said they were going to come back, and they did. Now, I hoped it was not going to be the week against me, but that's the way it goes sometimes. And so I'm sad that I lost, but happy that I was right. Sam is back on the right path here, and he beats me fair and square. You guys are seeing this. I had a couple guys show up, but for the most part, his guys just did much, much better. Not much to analyze here. What do you got?
Well, I just think it's really funny in the sense that, one of the guys that he has in his flex got negative 1 point. I've never seen that happen before.
And I still lost.
So I don't know. It's just, he had what we expected to happen with Eckler. With Eckler having a big game. Josh Allen, he was a little bit under expectation, but still, 23 points is respectable for most players.
Yeah.
And, everybody else sort of contributed through Metcalf, Thielen, and Higbee, but the thing that really hit you was McLaurin didn't do much of anything, and neither did Kittle. So
not that much.
I can't expect that through the rest of the season, but it really hit you at a bad time because if both of those guys had good games, this would have been close.
And to harp on my point just a little bit about Sam's team, this is also, we must state this, he also has Alvin Kamara, who did not play in this game. So if his team looks good in this, imagine if he added Alvin Kamara in there, and Alvin Kamara had a decent week. So on to the next matchup. We're going to go to Call of Duty, Jacob Weir versus Schutz. Schutz was 1-2. Jacob was 0-3. This was a battle of two of the guys at the bottom, and Jacob stays as the lone defeated team in the standings. So Schutz beats him. Once again, another blowout. I can't say that enough. I will say that every single matchup here. Give me something you saw in this matchup stood out to you.
I think the biggest thing is Tua. Tua goes out on Thursday night, and he's been having a really good season. Even before the week started, they were expecting him to get somewhere around 17 points, but to me that was just really low because I think that his receivers are good enough that even if he's not slinging the ball down the field, that he's going to get a lot of points. So with Tua only having, 3.5 points more or less, that hurt him a lot. And there's no way that you're going to come back from that if your quarterback goes down that early in a game and only puts up, 3 points. You would just have to have everybody else have like the best week ever for you to come back from something like that.
Yep.
And then the other thing too is I see that he took a risk on Mac Hollins. He's not exactly like a huge fantasy player, but the week before I think he led all receivers in fantasy points. So I think he was expecting a little bit more out of him too. So if those two things came together, it would have been a little bit more of a competitive game. But
on to the next matchup, we had a good one. We had Blake Morgan versus Josh Turley, and we're seeing here once again. I'll say it for the last time. I promise I won't say it again on any of the other matchups. Absolute blowout. The real story for Josh Turley here is he's 3-1, man. He's sitting at 3 in the standings, I believe, and nobody would have called this. Nobody believed in him at draft night. They were like, what is he doing? What is his strategy? And literally in this game, we can look at Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce. That stack that he went for, that he spent the majority of his money on, is paying dividends. 50 points, again, between the two of those guys, and the rest of his team really isn't doing that much. Obviously, he does have Tyreek Hill, who is good. But you see his running backs didn't have the greatest weeks. His flex didn't have the greatest weeks. And those two right there are giving him a baseline, a foundation where as long as everyone else just has a decent day, he's okay. And he's 3-1. Now, Cordero Patterson is on IR. I don't know if he's out all year yet. Do we know if they've announced that yet? Or
I have not heard that yet, so
I think he's expected to return,
yeah.
But he is on IR, so that's at least a minimum of about 4 weeks. So we'll see what he does here with the waiver wire and how he kind of fills in for that position. But he's sitting in a good spot for this season, and I mean he could really surprise people, end up in the playoffs, and make a run for this thing.
For all intents and purposes, J.D. McKissick, who is on his bench, could fill in temporarily, and as long as the rest of the players in his lineup pick up, as long as McKissick is getting 7, 8, 9 points a game, then I think he'll be okay, that he can cover. But he's definitely going to have to hope that James Robinson can have some more points than, under 2. Kelsey's always going to get his, and Tyreek Hill is going to do the same, and who knew Geno Smith actually isn't that bad. So Lockett isn't quite having as bad of a season as people expected him to either. So he always has a potential for a big game.
Definitely.
So yeah, he's I think it was just how much he paid for players, but he got the guys that he wanted, and they are good fantasy players. It was just
Yep. Not much to analyze from Blake's squad. I don't think he has to worry. He's been the most consistent, pretty much. I mean, obviously you've had the big weeks, but he for the first 3 weeks was probably the most consistent player. And I mean, the same story for him as all of us that took the L's this week. Just guys didn't show up. It was a weird week, and so that's what happened. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next one. We've got H Ford 123 versus Village Idiots Josh Locke. And what's your biggest takeaway from this game? Do you have anything? I was surprised on Hunter's side. He did have some guys that took off, and he still didn't pass the century mark of 100 points. Derrick Henry had a good week. Devontae Adams kind of bounced back from his bad week. Breece Hall, who's kind of, been, okay, is he going to boom? Is he going to be a bust? We don't know because he's a rookie. He had a solid week. So he had some guys do a solid week, but unfortunately, the rest of his team just didn't show up. So
yeah, Hunter, I think he's been trying to do a lot of negotiations with trades and whatnot, and trying to get his team really to where he wants it to be. And Derrick Henry had a solid game for him, and Devontae Adams bounced back a little bit from the week before, but back to having a player like Darren Waller, you'd expect him to have more than 4.5 or 5.5 points. Russell Gage didn't really give him much of anything. But it goes back to, on the other side, even if those players did have some, the other side was just so much better. it's kind of hard to say when the other guys just have just so many players with good games. You just can't make up for it, even if everybody else just picks it up a little bit.
Yep.
So and he did it without Jonathan Taylor. He had under 3 points. He's hurt now, and he did that. And looking at his team too, I mean, Pierce was a clutch
It was a
start.
huge bounce back for him because he was on a 2-game losing streak, and then boom, he just catapults right back up to the top of the standings. He's looking really good. Your boy Miles Sanders put the team on his back there. He's looking nice. So, and we can segue that right into your matchup. We'll go to yours next. We'll go from, it was Trap Daddy Thatcher versus Book of Mormons, the number 1 versus the number 3, the number 1 team name versus the number 2 team name. You can decide which one is which, the number 1 profile picture versus the number 2 profile picture. You can decide which was which, but it was the matchup of the week, potentially the matchup of the year, and Lucas's team did not show up, man.
No.
And kind of what you said on that last one there, it was just, hey, if your guys don't show up and every single one of his guys show up, it's just like, what can you do? You know what I mean? You can have 1 or 2 guys pop off. Like you had Nick Chubb, you had Cooper Kupp, ultra reliable. But when Marcus's team just comes out and every single player goes off, what are you going to do?
The one thing that about this and how my team performed this week that really made me not feel so bad about how everything happened was I had 4 players that combined for under 20 points, yet I still scored more points than 5 other people in the entire league. So to me, it was a bad week, a really bad week as a matter of fact, but Cooper Kupp, I spent the most money on him. He's been very consistent, getting over 20 points most weeks. And Nick Chubb, I feel like I got a really good value for Nick Chubb. He was one of the best fantasy running backs before, so yeah. He's kind of continuing that now, and he's been one of the best fantasy running backs this year too. And Lamar had a bad game, so Lamar had a bad game. He didn't really throw much to Andrews. Devontae Smith played a game in like a torrential downpour, and yet I still, was middle of the pack in terms of points scored this week. So it always stinks getting blown out, but there's a little bit of consolation in the sense that I put up 108 points on a really, really bad week.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It could have been worse.
At least your lows aren't as low. You know what I mean? Some of us this week put up 70 and 80 points, and like you're saying, hey, I had a bad week, but wasn't that bad actually.
Yeah, I feel like this is, unless someone's hurt, I feel like this is really about as bad as it's going to get for my team.
Yep.
But then Marcus, he really showed that his team is also one of those other teams that has like 200-point potential for a week. Yep. You just go down his roster.
He's got a good team. You've got a good team, and it would not shock anybody if come end of season, championship, fighting for the money, fighting for the ring, fighting for the belt is you versus him. So we could see this matchup again later on in the season. We'll have to stay tuned. So on to the final matchup, we have Braden, Catalina Wine Mixon versus Phillip, PD the Great, and Braden gets his first dub. He is out of the loser column. He is a little safe from the haircut. Not quite safe. Not enough to get comfortable, but he is no longer on the hot seat. No longer at the bottom of the standings. And he gets his first win. So kudos to him. J.K. Dobbins coming off the injury, looking nice. Kind of fueling for him. And then what in the world with Rashad Penny? Like, who saw that one coming? Like, of all people on that team, But Rashad Penny blows up, has a great week, and carries him to a nice, easy victory. And maybe this catapults Braden to a good rest of the season.
Hey, shout out to him for getting him on his team and putting him in the starting lineup.
Start of the week.
Yeah, not everybody would have done that, but he took a risk on 2 players, and it paid off big time for him. And Deebo Samuel, he's awesome. I mean, he had a huge game last night too, but it makes you feel really good once you had a couple of rough weeks that you bounce back in a big way. And he scored enough points for like an average week where he would have beaten pretty much anybody. So he had a really good week. And as soon as Rodgers really starts to get clicking with his younger receivers, I think that he'll see some more points out of him too.
And the bigger story in this matchup may be Phillip. He was talking in the group chat about his running backs, and his running backs have taken a hit. He just lost Javonte Williams for the season. And that's on top of the fact that DeAndre Swift already was missing this week. Now, we know DeAndre Swift is going to come back, so he'll be okay as far as that goes. But at the end of week 4, so we are, a fourth of the way through the season? Yeah, a fourth of the way through the season. We have Book of Mormons, Lucas, still holding down that top spot even after suffering a loss. But right on his heels is Trap Daddy Thatcher, Marcos, and then followed by Josh, Blake, myself, Josh Locke, Schutz, Hunter, Phillip, Sam, Braden, and Jacob is now at the bottom, the sole team without a win. And so that'll do it for our recap show. We will be back in a couple days to give you our predictions for week 5. So we will see you then. Thanks, guys.